Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Now over the years I've made a lot of diverse GTI content, but for some reason the Polo GTI has been largely overlooked. That's probably because if anybody ever asked me if they should buy one, I generally say they're better off buying a Golf GTI, even if it's a little bit older, to keep it in budget. But that's probably being a little bit unfair on the Polo, because it does have one big advantage over the Golf. The Golf has now become quite a big car, whilst the more compact dimensions of the Polo can be a real big asset if you live in cities and park in tight spaces, or you drive on narrow country roads. The only problem with the Polo as standard though is that it needs to go a little bit faster, stop a bit faster, sound a bit better and handle a bit better, and that's why I've come down here to Racing Line in Milton Keynes to try out their Polo GTI demo car, which benefits from no less than 16 different modifications. Could this modified Polo GTI actually be better than a Golf GTI? Well, let's find out. Okay, before we get started, I just need to point out some of these parts are still in the prototype stage, so you can't actually buy them. Where you can buy them, I'll put the price on the screen inclusive of UK VAT, but you can buy them from Racing Line agents all around the world. Now firstly, let's talk about software. As standard, the Polo GTI produces 197 brake horsepower, 320 Newton meters of torque. With Racing Line Stage 1 Plus remaps, that's the map plus the intake and the intercooler, this Polo GTI produces 248 brake horsepower. And the bit that really gets me is 440 Newton meters of torque. That's more than a Mark 8 Golf R. And we've only got front wheel drive, and we haven't got a clever diff. 0 to 60 on the standard car is 6.7 seconds. If you can get the traction in this car, I reckon it'll be mid to high 5s, which is a match, say, for Mark 7 Club Sport S, Mark 8 Club Sport. So yeah, if you can get the traction, we'll find out later how much grip there really is. Let's now have a look under the bonnet. First up, we have Racing Line's carbon fibre air intake, which looks really, really top quality. Can you see the weave in there? That's still a prototype, by the way. And then we have their Turbo 90 inlet, just there. Down there as well we have their turbo muffler delete, which you probably can't see. Behind the bumper we've got their prototype intercooler. And under the gearbox we've got their performance lower engine mount, so dog bone mount, which I can't show you, but I can demonstrate to you when we go for a drive. We've also got their EA888 3B engine oil cooler and DQ 250 gearbox oil cooler. Not even on the list are the dress-up parts there, so we've got their coolant cap and oil filler cap just there, which I think are not in the prototype stage at the moment. Right, let's now have a look around the outside of Racing Line's Polo GTI. Out here we have 6 different modifications, most of which offer a functional benefit as well as looking better than the factory items. First up, we have Racing Line's Sport Spring Kit. So this drops the car 35mm at the back, 30 at the front, so it now sits nice and level. It's clearly a lot lower than standard, but I don't think it's so ridiculously low you'll be leaving your front bumper on a curb every other day. We'll see what effect lowering it so much though has on the ride quality when we go for a drive in it shortly. But this car is running the factory option switchable dampers. We've also got Racing Line Stage 2 Evo Performance Brake Kit. This has got 4 piston calipers in red, and it's currently running the prototype track spec pads, but you can get road pads quite easily because it's just a standard pad size. You can see on there it's got an AP Racing temperature gauge, because this car's been pounding around Bedford testing these brakes, and they've stood all that abuse really, really well. Purely cosmetically, we've got the Racing Line side stripes, which look really good on a white car. They kind of break up all that white. The wheels are not Racing Line's own, they're Team Dynamic Pro 1.2 wheels, 17 by 7.5 inch. And they're currently running Michelin Primacy 3 tyres, so nothing particularly exotic about that rubber, but it's probably quite a good rubber for a cold and wet December day like today. Next up we have Racing Line's wiper delete. So if you don't like the look of the rear wiper because it looks a bit clumsy, you want your car to look more symmetrical, you can buy this rear wiper delete kit from Racing Line. And next up, I can't show you this, but I can allow you to listen to it. we have a prototype resonator delete. So a silencer has been taken out of the exhaust system and replaced with, I think, a straight pipe, but this is still a prototype. While I was revving the engine to get some exhaust noise, I noticed there was some good sound coming out from under the bonnet, so this must be the air intake and the turbo inlet, so have a listen. So yeah, it's childish for sure, but just for a car like this to have a little bit of character, because they never really come with any from the factory, it's got to be a good thing. I don't think it'll be overpowering when we go for a drive, but we'll do that shortly and find out. First up though, a couple of things on the inside of this car. So we've got Racingline'S much loved alloy paddles there, fitted to many Mark 7 7.5 Golfs, just the same steering wheel on this Polo, so just the same paddle. But yeah, nice proper metal, cold to the touch, but they still run the original mechanism that you get with the factory, so they don't feel particularly springy, but they definitely feel better for being alloy. And then in the boot we have Racingline'S brace bar. So it's carbon finish and it looks like it's bolted to the seats, doesn't it? But if you pull them forward, you can see the mounting goes around the eyelet for the rear seat. Right, I'm freezing, it's warmed up, let's now go for a drive. Okay guys, here we are driving Racingline'S Polo GTI with its 16 modifications, and I thought we'd start off in a village at about 10 miles an hour, because life is not one endless open B-road. This is how these cars will be used, and sure, they can clean up on track, but generally people will have them for everyday use. And here in eco mode, it's pretty docile really. Got DSG, so it just shuffles through the gears, and it's not awfully different to a standard car that rides a little bit firmer, but actually not overly obviously at these kinds of speeds. The brakes, whilst it's got race pads, they feel pretty normal to me, and yeah, that's good. So they feel pretty responsive just driving sedately like that, and they also will work really well on track when they're really hot. So yeah, that's brake pad technology of the 21st century. Okay, now the road is opening up a bit, and I better put it in individual mode because we've got the switchable dampers, so we want them to be comfortable, but we want everything else to be aggressive. So it just drops the gear in third gear now. Put it into manual mode, I think. So firstly, it's quick, you can kind of work that out, but I'm more interested in character. We've got induction, noise, we've got turbo chatter as well, which is pretty cool, the kind of thing the factory have engineered out because they don't think people want it, but I'm pretty sure us guys, we do. We want to hear the turbo working because it kind of engages us with the cars. We can hear it working hard, and it's just kind of nice to be tuned into it. And we've got a bit more tone from the exhaust, so it's not overpowering. We'll turn around and do this at a sort of a steady 50-60, and you can kind of hear how intrusive it is. We'll put it into auto mode and put it back into eco. So mode eco, okay, and then it'll just shuffle through the gears. We can do 60. You can hear the turbo making some great noises. Okay, so that's how silent it is at 50. Listen to that. We're just cruising along in sixth. The 6-speed DSG, by the way, in this car. So there we go. It's pretty normal. there's not an awful lot of travel in the suspension, so you might find it sort of bottoms out every so often, but it does give you amazing control in the corners. On a smooth track, it would be, for what that sport spring kit costs, an amazing transformation. And then I say onto the brakes into the 30, and wow, you can really modulate them as well. So just driving slowly, if I want to pull into this driveway, say, there. But if I want to brake hard because a kid runs out from this driveway now, yeah, I think we've just ripped the 30-mile-an-hour sign off the ground there. So yeah, it's not a heavy car, so if you upgrade the brakes from the factories, which are always pretty good for the road anyway, you do get amazing stopping power. So yeah, back into the village then, ambling along in eco mode. It's got a nice driving position, so yeah, it's as low as it goes, and that's not bad. And we've got the big screen here, which is pretty cool. No heated seats, sort of manual air conditioning, but it's not actually a bad cabin. It's got these coloured inlays which do brighten it up a lot. I mean, they kind of do take your eye off the quality of the plastics, which actually they're not bad. They're actually soft touch, which is better than T-Rock. So that's a surprise. And we've got the alloy paddles, which are now nice and warm because the cabin is now nice and warm. But yeah, they do add to the enjoyment and the sense of occasion when you drive this car. And it's got a lovely little burble, even when you're not flooring it. In fact, probably when you're actually better when you're not flooring it is the very kind of subtle pops, not so much bangs, but just a little bit of a burble, which is pretty cool. And it loves, if you put it into manual mode and don't let it kick down, don't go too far, you can just feel all that 440 Newton meters. That's 5th gear. So it's a little bit laggy because, well, when it gets going, it's going to be producing 440 Newton meters. So that's to be expected, but yeah, so that's 5th gear, just avoiding the kick down point. You can hear the turbo chirping. That's 60 miles an hour. That's pretty good, that is. I don't think we've got a transmission control unit map on it, so it will change down if you kick down even in manual mode. Yeah, so that's 6 in manual mode. Oh, I could be wrong. It's not kicking down. Well, there we go, guys. That's probably the cherry on top, that we've got full manual mode in manual mode. At least it's not kicking down anyway. I don't know what it's going to do at the rev limiter. Shall we find out? Yeah, I think I'm pretty convinced that it didn't want to change that. So we've got full manual mode in manual mode, and for me that makes such a big difference because you can get into a corner and you can just squeeze the throttle and you've not got any interference from the gearbox. You're just letting the torque go to the wheels, and yeah, that's very, very impressive. So okay, traction is somewhat limited. We haven't got a VAQ diff and we haven't got 4-wheel drive, but actually you'd be amazed how much full throttle you can use. Okay, let's finish off with a standing start then. So we've got it in sport mode, we've got it in auto mode, traction control's on because conditions aren't great, although this road is actually dry just here. I'm not going to use launch control either, I'm just going to do it normally. Right, let's go. Spin. Okay, well that's the Polo GTI from Racingline'S with its 16 or possibly more modifications. I've driven a lot of hot hatches, not an awful lot of Polo GTIs, but I kind of know what makes a good one, and it's not all about out and out speed, it's more about sort of having character, handling well, and just being an enjoyable car to drive when you're not driving it flat out. That's where cars like the Golf R fail, because they could, to all intents and purposes, be any old Golf if you're not giving it death. This car, with its modifications, I particularly like the exhaust burble. I love the turbo chatter and induction noise we've got now as well. That just gives the car a lot of character when you're not driving it hard. But if you are driving it hard, it's an exciting car to drive. There's no doubt about that, and partly that's because there's not an awful lot of traction, so you have to think carefully when you're going to give it the throttle, and you know, that would just make it really exciting. If it just put all the power down like a Golf R, well, that would make you go really fast and not be particularly exciting. So yeah, it's there's no doubt about it, it's way more exciting than the standard car. I guess the biggest compromise is probably when it comes to ride quality, because whilst it's not bad, it's actually quite comfortable even at slow speeds, and it's perfectly fine on the open road. But where it does fail is there's not an awful lot of travel in the suspension, so if you do find an abrupt bump in the road or a pothole, you'll find it'll bottom out quite quickly, which will come as a shock, because it does that with a real bang. But that's relatively rare, and it all depends on where you live and where you drive. If you spend a lot of time on motorways and well-surfaced roads, you'll probably never experience that. So the Racingline Polo GTI is clearly a very impressive package, but going back to the original question, could it actually be better than a Golf GTI? Well, it's certainly more exciting than any non-limited Golf GTI out the box, but there is one Golf GTI that gives it a good run for its money when it comes to thrills and character, and that is, of course, the Mark 8 Golf GTI Club Sport. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this VOLKSWIZARD video. As ever, if you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, please do comment, please do share, please do subscribe. See, there is a value to lane assist after all, and I'll see you for the next video soon, which will be before New Year. Before that though, please have yourselves a really good Christmas, and thanks for all your support.